Well, good morning to everyone. Good to see you on this nice sunny day in this potluck day. So I understand the pressure's on. Got to do a short one. I'll see what I can do. It's a question really of what sort of Sabbath. That's the question there in Luke chapter 13 that we read this morning. There's kind of two different ones to choose from. There's the one that the synagogue official and his friends understood the Sabbath to be about, which was about making sure we follow the rules and the laws the right way and don't mess up, right? So a successful Sabbath, meeting the goal of the Sabbath, achieving the goal of the Sabbath is if we make it through the whole day and everyone does all the rules the right way and no one messes up, and then God is pleased, God's happy. That's one view of the Sabbath. Of course, we're familiar with that one. And of course, we're familiar with Jesus' alternative view of the Sabbath. How do we know that we've achieved the goal of the Sabbath? What is the Sabbath really about? That's what we come to find in this story in Luke chapter 13. Luke is the only one of the gospel authors that tell us this story. It's very important to Luke to get this in for his Christian readers, for his audience, for that church community. And it's a story that poses the question for them. What is our gathering about? What does it mean when God's people come together? What is that for? Is it about following the rules, making sure we do it the right way, and we know we've succeeded together in a day of worship when we've done everything the right way? Or is there something else that's more important to God? This is Luke's question to his readers via Jesus' question to his friends in the synagogue. So we read the story. Jesus was there in the synagogue on the Sabbath. The woman, 18 years, was doubled over, hadn't straightened her back, hadn't looked at the world like you and I do for 18 years. Think of her perspective. Think of what she sees. Think of how her life is from day to day for 18 years. Doubled over, could not straighten up at all for 18 years. And verse 12 is one of the keys here. When Jesus saw her. When Jesus saw her. You know, it was possible to not see her. It was possible for Jesus to go through his day on the Sabbath in the synagogue, having not seen her at all. That's the way that most people went through. That was her experience, not being seen. But Jesus saw her. And it's because of that her whole life was changed. Jesus saw her, and he called her over, and he said to her, "Woman, you are freed from your sickness." It's Jesus seeing her, and in verse 13, he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made erect again and began glorifying God. When was the last time that someone had touched her? When was the last time that she had been seen? We know the last time when she was able to stand up straight 18 years ago. What if it had been 18 years of not being seen? 18 years of no one really touching her, letting her know that she was loved, that she was seen, that she was of value in their community. So that scene happens, and the synagogue official gets mad because Jesus healed on the Sabbath, right? You got 6 other days of the week, Jesus, to heal. This is verse 14. Listen, we're not asking too much of you. 6 out of 7 days of the week, you can do this sort of stuff, okay? Sabbath, come on. The Sabbath is for something else, all right? The Sabbath is for something else. But the Lord, verse 15, answered and said to him, "You hypocrites. What is it that you did this morning on the Sabbath? You know, I heard that you, every Sabbath, go out and untie your ox or your donkey and lead him away to drink water. No, I'm no expert, but I think that might be considered work. What do you think?" Jesus says. Well, we're just trying to, you have to do that. For the animal to survive, you got to do a little work to untie him and that sort of thing. But Jesus obviously makes his point. Yeah, that's right. Why do you do that for your ox or your donkey? Because of life, right? So that they can live. And he says, maybe you guys have been missing the point for your whole life, for as long as you can remember. But actually, the Sabbath is about life. Actually, the Sabbath is about freedom. And you secretly know that because you break your own rules to give life to your own animals. How much more this daughter of Abraham, he says in verse 15. Bound for 18 long years, shouldn't she too be released from the bond, this bondage on the Sabbath day? And now, for the first time, his opponents bend over, and their head bows in humiliation. Verse 17. But everyone else starts cheering and rejoicing at the glorious thing that God had done, because they saw what you're supposed to see. And they understood what was most important, that the Sabbath is about healing. God's people, God's community is about healing. Our gatherings together are about freedom. That's the goal. That's what Jesus believed. That's what Jesus taught. That's what Luke believed. That's the message he's given to his Christian community. Is that the message that we understand and the message that we believe? Now, no one, including Jesus, is saying the rules and the laws aren't important. Jesus famously said, "I'm not here to abolish the law. I'm not even here to abolish a single dot in the law, a single squiggle in the law. I'm not even going to take away a squiggle. I love the law. The law is awesome. But I am here to fulfill it." And here's what fulfilling looks like. It looks like taking the community of the worshiping community of God and saying, this assembly is fulfilled when healing occurs, when freedom is experienced. And it is possible for human beings to gather together and to say the most important thing, even at the expense of someone experiencing freedom, is for us to make sure we check off the rules of how we're supposed to do things. And you and I both know that that's possible, and we've probably experienced that from time to time. But Jesus has come to set us free. And this church community is about that. That's why we're here. That's why we exist. So that whoever wills can come and experience, maybe even for the first time, maybe for the first time in 18 years, the freedom of Christ. Being seen. Knowing that they have value. Belonging. That's the goal of this community here. When I was in 8th grade, we lived in Washington State, in a city called Cheney, which is next to Spokane, Washington. And when I was in 8th grade, my dad took a job in Appleton, Wisconsin. And it was in the middle of the 8th grade year. And so it was kind of like a whirlwind, and everything happened all at once. And all of a sudden we're told, okay, we're moving in the middle of school year. It was towards the end of the football season. And I didn't know how to deal with that. I was in 8th grade, and it was kind of weird and strange. I didn't understand. Well, it had an impact on me. And I remember I didn't even say goodbye to any of my friends, any of them. Most of them I didn't even tell I was moving, because I didn't know how to deal with that as a boy, as an 8th grader. It was very traumatic, being told, well, your whole life is changing and everything you have is gone and we're going somewhere else. It has an impact on you, So I just never talked about it. And then, as far as they're concerned, I disappeared or was raptured or something. I don't know what they ever knew about me, but I just wasn't there anymore. And I only told one person, who caught me like carrying my trumpet home on a weird Tuesday, where no one ever takes their trumpet home on a Tuesday. But I'm like, yeah, I'm moving tomorrow. And they're like, what's going on? Okay. But then I moved to this place in Appleton, Wisconsin. And I went to the school that was closest to me, Roosevelt Middle School. I think it was a junior high at that time, 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. So I get into this school, and I'm in 8th grade, and I had really the worst experience of my life. When I was in Washington, the cool kids, it's important to be cool, which just means, having some experience of being accepted and belonging, whatever. But those were the kids who went to class, did their homework, respected the teachers, behaved well in school, were just, good, trying to be good people. Respectful, diligent, responsible, that sort of thing. So, and that was kind of what I liked to be anyway, and it was easy. And I had friends, and I was comfortable, and I fit in, and everything worked. When I got to the school in 8th grade at Roosevelt, the cool kids were the ones who were late to homeroom every day, because they would be standing across the street, just off of school property, smoking cigarettes before school, and then come in late, That's just a way to describe there's a huge difference here. These are like, 8th graders, smoking cigarettes, late to homeroom, horribly disrespectful to teachers. I could never say out loud some of the stuff that they did and said to these poor teachers at this little school, Roosevelt Junior High. Just really rough. If you do your homework or even care about school or even participate in class, you're a loser. How pathetic could you be to care? Nobody cares. Just screwing off, doing anything but what is responsible and diligent and respectful, I had a really tough time fitting in, and I didn't. There was another kid that came around the same time as me in the middle of the school year, and his name was Phil, and he was very extroverted and gregarious and funny and loud, and he made it, man. He made it. He got in. He was accepted. He had friends, and that didn't happen to me. I didn't make it. I was like kind of quiet and shy and introverted, and I was not valued. And to be valued so little in this great shift that happened to me in such a short period of time, to be valued for so little was shocking to me. That I was the one that people made fun of, that I was the one that got pushed into a locker, that I was the one that got called names, that I was the one that people picked fights with. After school, a scheduled fight, that only happened once because I was also in wrestling. So that didn't go too bad for me, but all the rest of it, all the rest of it, to be valued so little. And for no one to care about you except to mock you, for no one to take the time out of their day to notice you except to ridicule you. That leaves deep wounds, that leaves deep scars. I mean, that stayed with me for a long time and probably still does today. I was in therapy like 9 or 10 years ago, and the therapist was pointing out, like, you're still this 8th grader in a lot of ways. Like, you never got over that. It stays with you. This is what this woman knew. This was her life. This was her experience. And she comes to the place, the only place where she hopes that maybe she could experience something a little bit different, have a little bit different of an experience. And it's the same thing. We're about the rules here. So, we're just trying to go do things by the book. Don't really have time for healing, don't really have time for relationship. Want to make sure we check the boxes and do it the right way here. And Jesus says, no, you totally missed the point of what the assembly is about. This synagogue, this gathering of God's people is about freedom. It's about liberty. It's about seeing people who are in the room. It's about them being seen and finding and experiencing freedom. Do you know that was the only place where I actually found freedom when I was in 8th grade? It was the first time where I ever really started to understand what church is about. That for all the miserable week that I would go to school, how I would loathe it, how I would pretend I was sick sometimes so I could stay home from school, and I hated every second of it. But what I long for every week is to go to this place where I belonged, where I was accepted, where people noticed or told me that I had value, where I had friends, where I experienced the freedom that this woman experienced. And that place was called the Mason Street Church of Christ. A little youth group, a few friends. One of them I ended up marrying. And I couldn't wait to get to church every week because they did it the right way. I'm not saying they were perfect at it, but I'm saying this stuff happens in real life to real people, to 8th graders, to 80-year-olds, to 8-year-olds. This place matters to people. It can change someone's life if we do it the right way, if we see it the way that Jesus sees it. If we understand that people walk in this door being doubled over and bent over, having not been seen, having not been touched, having not been listened to for years. And all they're looking for is to be set free from this bondage. Jesus can do that through you, through me. All it takes is a little bit of noticing, paying attention. There are people in this room here today that are looking for that. And we can be about paying attention, noticing. There's a poem by Mary Oliver that's about the sun. She says, have you ever seen anything in your life more wonderful than the way the sun every evening relaxed and easy floats towards the horizon and into the clouds or the hills or the rumpled sea and is gone, and how it slides again out of the blackness every morning on the other side of the world like a red flower. And she keeps going from there. What a question. Have you ever noticed the sun, she says. But it's a profound question, isn't it? The sun's always there, yeah. But how much have we really taken the time to notice it? She's asking a deeper question of, hey, did you see the sunrise today? Did you see the sunset? She's asking, are you really paying attention? to the biggest, most obvious, most life-giving thing that we have around us. It's a metaphor for God. Are we really paying attention to what God is doing and trying to do in our midst? And that starts with us paying attention to the people whom God is putting in our lives on a regular basis. And it starts here with our church family. So I want to encourage us to answer the question as Jesus would. What sort of Sabbath do we practice? What sort of assembly? What sort of gathering of God's people? And may it be the one that Jesus is longing for us to be. And Lord knows that people in this room have experienced that here, and we praise God for that. May it be a place of being seen, of being valued, of being set free. Let's stand and sing.